2311 Racing has announced that Kurt Busch will sit out the beginning of the playoffs and has withdrawn a spot in the NASCAR Cup Series Plus and will not compete for a championship. And Joey Logano has signed a long-term contract extension with Team Penske. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start our paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Eric Jones 2022, the Morgan Law Group scheme you're going to see later this year at Homestead. Pretty cool looking paint scheme, in my opinion. Really excited to see that Eric Jones has a new sponsor other than Focus Factor jumping on. I think the paint scheme looks really awesome. I'm excited to see on the racetrack later this year at Homestead. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2022 Kroger NOS Energy scheme we're seeing this weekend at Daytona. This game's okay in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the front logo on the car, basically Kroger always being up front, but of course Kroger has a big partnership with JTG, so it makes sense. Glad to see that NOS is stepping up to sponsor Ricky Stenhouse. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is BJ McLeod's 2022 NASCAR Rivals scheme we'll be seeing this weekend at Daytona. This game looks really good in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the company themselves, but I think it looks really awesome to see that NASCAR Rivals has a new game coming out. It looks great, and it looks a really good paint scheme in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Spencer Boyd's 2022 Pro Built Pool and Patio scheme you're going to be seeing later this season. Not sure exactly which race. I would think it'd be Kansas if I'm not mistaken. It's good to see Spencer Boyd has a new sponsor though. Happy to see all the new sponsor on the racetrack later this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Haley's 2022 Dobbin Score scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend in the Xfinity Series race at Daytona. It's great to see that Justin Haley will be back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and I think the paint scheme looks pretty good in my opinion. Excited to see that Justin Haley is back in the Xfinity Series. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sage Karam's 2022 Clermont Lake scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Daytona. Pretty awesome to see that Clermont Lake stepping up to sponsor Sage Karam. It's great when a new sponsor comes in. Happy to see that Sage Karam has a new sponsor for this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Cinders' 2022 Maytag Menard scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Daytona. There's not much to say here, other than the fact he's got Maytag on the front of it. But it's pretty cool to see that Maytag is stepping up and sponsoring. Happy to see Cinder has kind of a new sponsor on the front of the car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Joey Gase's 2022 National Crime Prevention Council scheme we'll be seeing this weekend at Daytona. Honestly, amazing to see that National Crime Prevention is basically stepping up to sponsor Joey Gase. They've got the McGruff dog on front. I think it looks awesome, and I'm excited to see this car on the racetrack this weekend at Daytona. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeb Burton's 2022 Fly Alliance scheme we're going to be seeing this weekend at Daytona. There's not much going on here, but honestly, I think it looks pretty cool. I like the blue, I like the plainness of it, and honestly, I think it looks pretty decent in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Hill's 2022 United Rentals scheme you'll be seeing this weekend at Daytona. Very different looking paint scheme. Very excited to see that we got United Rentals continue to have a really cool partnership, and they've changed up with United Rentals over time, and it looks pretty good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Haley's 2022 Celsius scheme you'll be seeing this Saturday in the Cup race at Daytona. Really excited to see if Celsius is stepping up and sponsoring Justin Haley, and of course Celsius is a pretty big partnership with College Racing, so no surprise they're partnering up. And I think the scheme actually looks cool. I like the orange number on it. I like the white. Everything on it really works perfectly, and it's a good looking scheme in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Hammer's 2022 Circle Water scheme they'll be seeing this weekend in the Cup race at Daytona. Awesome to see a Circle Wall. He's had him on their Xfinity Series car. He'll have it on his Cup car as well. Very excited to see Circle step up. Good, it's a decent looking scheme, and hopefully have a good run in this car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brandon Brown's 2022 Larry's Hard Lemonade scheme you'll be seeing this weekend at Daytona. Yes, heard that right. Larry's Hard Lemonade is back sponsoring Brandon Brown for this weekend for the first time. After kind of issues after last year, after what happened at Talladega, it's amazing to see that they've got a great partnership, and it's a happy ending to an unfortunate story. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Denny Hamlin's 2022 FedEx Care scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Daytona. Honestly, this is one of the worst FedEx Care schemes I've seen. There's not much going on. It's unfinished. There's a lot of things that honestly need to be done with this scheme. I think Joe Gibbs Racing's has some good paint schemes, but unfortunately, this one's kind of a dud. Not a big fan of this scheme, and it's not the greatest scheme that I've seen. In my opinion, it's not that great. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode. as we're going to talk about Julia Geis. As it was announced today that Julia Geis is going to be leaving Phoenix Raceway after the championship race. Now, why is she going to be leaving? She is going to be moving over to become manager and become president of the Chicago Street Course Plan. I think this is such a big pickup for the Chicago Street Course. I think Julie Geis has done a really good job with Phoenix. She's been part of the Phoenix brand for a couple of years now. Helped Phoenix get major renovations over the years, and I think she's going to do such a good job with the company and the brand as well. It's super exciting to see for sure. And congratulations to Julie Geis for getting an opportunity. It's unclear who will be taking over for her, but I think it's cool to see that for sure, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Pemberton. As it was announced yesterday that Ryan Pemberton has parted ways with Junior Motorsports. Ryan Pemberton has been working with Junior Motorsports since 2012 for the last 10 years as one of the higher-ups at the team. L.W. Miller, who is the husband of Kelly Earnhardt Miller, is going to assume that role as a higher-up at Junior Motorsports. It's a shame that Ryan Pemberton has been in the industry for a long time, has parted ways, but I think he has some things he really wants to do, and fair play to him. He's got other ambitions he wants to do. It is what it is. Congratulations on a great time. He's really helped the team out, and glad to see that he not glad to see it, but it's unfortunate what's happened, but it is what it is. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Don Staley. As it was announced on Tuesday morning that Don Staley is going to drive the pace car at the Southern 500. Don Staley, who I believe is the coach for the South Carolina basketball girls team. I think this is such a cool thing to see, is that Don Staley, who's been doing basketball and coaching for many years, I think it's just so cool to see that she is getting involved in driving the pace car, an icon of the South Carolina area. It's really awesome to see, and happy to see that she will be the pace car driver in the Southern 500. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Carlos Sainz. According to Adam Stern, Carlos Sainz hasn't invested in TMRW Sports, a company that is owned by Tiger Woods. Carlos Sainz currently drives Ferrari, who has an outside chance of winning the championship, though he's way too many points back. It's just so cool to see that we've got Formula One drivers and race car drivers getting involved with major people in the world of sporting. It's cool to see for sure, and happy to see that he's investing in TMRW Sports. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Patrick Emmerling. As Patrick Emmerling is going to drive the 5 for BJ McLeod Motorsports this weekend at Daytona. Natalie Decker was originally supposed to drive the 5 car this weekend, but they had some issues getting some sponsorship through. It basically was a CBD drink that she was supposed to be sponsored with, but now Patrick Emmerling, who drives the 35 generally for Emmerling Gates Motorsports, will be competing against his co-owner this weekend. This 5 car has enough owner's points, I believe, to get in the show, so owner's points will not be an issue. This is a cool opportunity for him, and good luck to Patrick Emmerling this weekend at Daytona. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tim Veens. As Tim Veens is going to drive the 47 for My Carmen Racing this weekend at Daytona. Tim Veens was not originally supposed to be the driver. Brendan Poole was actually initially supposed to be the driver of the 47 car. But the reason they have made changes is because Tim Veens has been linked to the 47 team for a long time. And I'll be honest, I don't think Tim Veens is going to make the show. The car has to make it on owner's points. I don't want to disrespect Tim, but I really have not been impressed with what Tim's done behind the wheel. I'm not expecting much from Tim, and I think he's going to struggle, and I don't think he'll make the race this weekend. No disrespect to him, but I think he missed the show, unfortunately. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tatiana Calderon. As it was announced today that Tatiana Calderon will be returning to Formula 2 to be a teammate of Enzo Fittipaldi with the Shav Ross Systems organization. Tatiana Calderon this year has been competing in the IndyCar Series in the 14 car for AJ Foyt Racing. But due to payments from the company that has sponsored her and the company that has been willing to work with her in the sponsorship she's had, they unfortunately are no longer going to be working with Tatiana Calderon, and they've had issues with payments. It's really important with Rocket, that's the real company. They've had issues with the company, and they've lost the sponsorship from that. It's honestly disappointing that she lost her opportunity, but it's good to see that she has found another opportunity to go back and work in Formula 2. Wishing her the best of luck, and good to see that she's getting back in Formula 2, but I'm wishing her the best of luck in Formula 2. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Andres Perez de Lara. As the current championship leader in the NASCAR Mexico Series, will be making 3 starts in ARCA in the 54 car for DGR Racing. Andre Perez Laura will be jumping out from Mexico and will be competing in the United States. This is a huge opportunity for Andres Perez de Laura for a couple reasons. One, Andres Perez has been doing really good in the NASCAR Mexico Series, especially with success of Daniel Suarez and other drivers have come from Mexico. I think that's a big reason why he's jumping up. He wants to be the next great Mexican driver who can succeed. But he's also in a very, very competitive car. DGR Racing has been really competitive over the years in ARCA. They've been competitive in the Truck Series with their drivers. And I think this is such a cool opportunity for Andres to race in the series. I'm wishing him the best of luck and happy to see that he will be making his debut, making 3 starts in ARCA for the scene. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about IndyCar Drive to Survive. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern earlier this evening that IndyCar is getting a Drive to Survive like unscripted docuseries is an important part of our roadmap, and we've had a lot of dialogue in the space. So there's probably more news to come in regards to that. A lot of series are looking at a Drive to Survive series. Of course, when it comes to NASCAR, there's going to be a Drive to Survive technical series that is going to be happening on USA that is going to be called Race for the Championship that premieres on September 1st, which is going to be kind of a little bit like the Drive to Survive. And IndyCar's goal now is to do that. Why? To capture that young audience. You really want to be able to capture that young audience who is going to tune in into their series. So it makes a lot of sense to them to go ahead and try to capture it. Do I think that we need to be copycatting in it? No, but if Drive to Survive succeeds, why couldn't other series do it? So I think this is such a cool thing. Do I think it's great? It is what it is, and I think that they've got to do something to try to capture that audience. I know some people probably disagree with me, but I think what they're doing right now to try to capture younger audiences is important, and they're going to have to capture a younger audience anyways. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Russia. The president of Formula One, Stefano Domenicali, basically confirmed that Formula One will not be going to racing Russia anytime soon and probably will never be racing in Russia again. One of the big reasons is because of the Ukraine war. And remember, every major event and anything that Russia had been associated with had pretty much been taken down, and Russia basically lost a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, including the Formula One race in Sochi, which, let's be honest, the Formula One race in Sochi was not that special anyways. It is a shame, though, the Formula One will never go back to Russia, but especially after what happened, I cannot blame them for not wanting to make that decision to go back to Russia. It is what it is, and honestly, I think it's a good decision overall. I know some will disagree, but honestly, I think generally it's a really, really good decision to not go back to Russia, especially with everything that happened. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about some major penalties. It was announced on Tuesday morning that the number 51 team, the number 51 Ricker racing car, has been issued a penalty for a loss of or separation of added ballast. This means that it'll be a 4-race suspension for the crew chief of the 51 car, the car chief of the 51 car, and the 51 team's team engineer. Now, one of the big things is there were photos that basically surfaced this past weekend where there had been ballast, I think, that got into haulers, if I'm not mistaken, and people had nearly been clipped in there. Ballast and added ballast, this is where I agree with the 4-race suspensions. Ballast and that coming off a car, the tungsten, that stuff is really, really heavy, and if that stuff falls off, that can be not only dangerous, but that can really, really hurt somebody and cause severe damage to somebody. And you don't want that getting onto a racetrack. So I think it is the right call to penalize them. I think what they did was justified. And again, you got to penalize teams and be consistent. And I think it's good that they went ahead and penalized them for 4 races. I think generally it's a good call. And in my opinion, it is the right call to go ahead and penalize them for 4 races because you got to be consistent. And I think it is the right call, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some upcoming announcements. Now, this weekend at Daytona, there are going to be 3 major announcements that are going to be taking place. Later today, when you're watching this, at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there is going to be an announcement of a NASCAR partnership. On Saturday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Trackhouse is going to have an announcement. And then on Saturday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern, there is going to be an announcement regarding Daytona. Let's begin with the NASCAR partnership. I've got a pretty good idea of what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be an announcement for the Truck Series. Remember, Camping World is going to be leaving the Camping World will be leaving the Truck Series after this year as a sponsor, and they will not be sponsoring. Craftsman currently is rumored right now to become the sponsor, so I think it's going to be announced that Craftsman is going to be sponsored. Let's jump over to the Daytona announcement. It could be an announcement of a sellout crowd for the weekend. It could be something else, maybe a return of the Daytona road course, perhaps. I know some people have basically been lobbying to try to get the Daytona road course back. That could be a possibility. We don't really know much about that. Now let's jump over to the Trackhouse announcement of what it absolutely could be. There are a couple big possibilities. Number one, it could be an announcement of a third car for the Project 91 car, maybe going full time. We're going to talk a lot about Project 91 and some things that could be coming from that, but it sounds like Justin Marks may be teasing something around that. It also could be Daniel Suarez's contract extension. Daniel Suarez, they have said, is very, very close to signing a contract extension with Trackhouse Racing, and I think that is a very big possibility. The other big possibility, and maybe it's a long shot, is maybe announcing Kyle Busch to a third car. That is a very potential option. We know Trackhouse made some crazy moves, and that's a very big possibility. Who knows at this point, but there's some big announcements coming. There's going to be a lot to talk about after this weekend, and we will definitely be talking about that after the weekend and definitely on Monday or Tuesday for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Ricciardo. As it was announced yesterday that Daniel Ricciardo will not be returning to McLaren in 2023. After a lot of speculation and rumblings on the future of Daniel Ricciardo, they have decided to exit his contract a year early. Daniel Ricciardo was actually supposed to be racing in the McLaren family in 2023, but after not really performing so far the last couple years outside of that win in Monza, that is not a major shock that Daniel Ricciardo is leaving. Now, there's a lot of questions on the future of Daniel Ricciardo and where he could honestly end up. But one of the big reasons I think he's losing his contract is because of the lack of on-track performance. Performance has not been really, really good for Daniel Ricciardo. It's no secret that the performance for the team has not been great. So it's not a shock or a surprise that they probably have dropped him. Right now, the rumored driver currently to take over for him is Oscar Piastri. We talked about on the channel a couple months ago and all the chaos when it came to contracts and teams not really disclosing contracts and issues with communication happened. There was talk about Piastri was going to go and return to Alpine, but then he confirmed that he'd be going over to McLaren more than likely. So Piastri is more than likely going to go to McLaren. It's also been noted that Alex Palou tweets have basically kind of been deleted, though you've got to go through the direct and stuff. You can find those tweets still around. That being said, though, it's unclear what Ricciardo's going to do. I think he should either go to IndyCar or race in Project 91. We're going to talk about Project 91 in a little bit here, by the way, but I think it would be definitely amazing for sure if he came to NASCAR and raced in Project 91. It's a shame he's not returning to McLaren, but it's not a shock. He's not had a lot of great performances, and compared to Lando Norris, and Lando really feels no sympathy for the lack of performance, it's not a major shock, and it surprised me that that has happened. And again, you got to have better performances, and he really has not been able to generally perform, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Kimi Räikkönen. Now, after the NASCAR Cup Series race took place, some of us noticed on his Instagram, Kimi Räikkönen is basically wanting to race in NASCAR once again, and is hoping to make more starts in NASCAR, and wants to make more starts in real racing. I think that's a little bit of a jab at Formula One, or maybe he wants to race in ovals. That is a very big possibility. Below in the comments, you saw that Trackhouse basically said, maybe in the future, stay tuned. Now, we know at this point that probably this only start for Project 91 is going to be the best past weekend at Watkins Glen. But could there be a possibility that we see another start with Kimi Räikkönen? I think that Kimi Räikkönen has a lot of unfinished business. Kimi Räikkönen had a really, really impressive run and a really impressive start at Watkins Glen. He ran the whole race pretty much inside the top 20 and ran in the top 10 a lot of the race as well, but had nowhere to go in a wreck that was caused by his teammate, Ross Chastain. Kimi Räikkönen also was really, really happy and was smiling, which I think that's cool to see that Kimi Räikkönen was actually happy. I hope he does get an opportunity to come back. I think a lot of fans really want Kimi to be back. I think he has some unfinished business, and I do believe and I do want to see Kimi Räikkönen truly have another opportunity to get some starts in NASCAR. I think he'd do great, and it'd be awesome to see him for sure have another opportunity to race in the car. It would be pretty cool to see him, and I hope he does get an opportunity to race in the Project 91 car. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Jeff Gordon. as it was announced yesterday that Jeff Gordon is going to be racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course on Labor Day weekend. And get this, he is going to be teamed up with former crew chief Ray Evernham. Jeff Gordon has not raced, to my knowledge, in a car in a sanctioned race, since 2016 when he drove the 88 car for Hendrick Motorsports in substitution for Dale Earnhardt Jr. So this is absolutely really, really huge that Jeff Gordon is returning to racing. And teaming up with Ray Evernham, it's just going to feel like the 1990s all over again, but a modern version of it in a Porsche Carrera Cup. Now, honestly, I don't know how Jeff Gordon's going to do. He hasn't raced that much recently. But I think it'd be so amazing if Jeff Gordon did have an opportunity to go overall and compete for the win. I don't think he's going to win, but I think Ray Evernham probably would be able to help with that since Ray's not really fully focused on S4X anymore. He could definitely focus on this series and really help it out. I just think it's so cool that Jeff Gordon is coming back to racing. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's incredible, and I think it's amazing to see that we're going to see Jeff Gordon back in the world of racing. I think it's honestly really great to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Project 91. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that more than 20 drivers across series like Formula One, IndyCar, and the World Endurance Championship have inquired in recent days about doing a one-off NASCAR appearance with Project 91. After the success of Kimi Räikkönen, despite crashing out, after the success of the Project 91 car, how much interest it got. It's no secret that a lot of drivers really want to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. This includes drivers like Marcus Harrison and Jenson Button, and Kimi Räikkönen as well. This is what the car was designed to do. It was supposed to attract a lot of drivers to different forms of racing, whether they're from Europe, whether they're from different countries in Asia, Europe, or even the United States. This car was meant to get drivers from different countries involved. And I think it'd be so cool if this car could run full-time. And honestly, I think this Project 91 car is probably going to need to be run full-time, considering how many drivers truly have interest to get behind the wheel. And after the success of Project 91, I really want to see as many drivers as possible get that opportunity and get that chance. So I hope it happens. I really, really do. And again, I hope we get a lot of drivers. Maybe Jimmy Johnson comes over. He's shown interest. Joseph Newgarden, he showed interest over time. I would love for the Project 91 car to get more opportunities, and maybe in the future, maybe that's what the announcement that Saturday is going to come. Hope whatever it is, it could be that they can run more races and see more races even this year. I'd love for Project 91 to run a little bit more in 2023, and maybe they get a charge for that car. That could be a potential option that comes around in the future as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Trackhouse Racing once again. Now, Trackhouse Racing, once again, is in the news as there was a report by Adam Stern earlier today that says that Justin Marks says that entering the Indy 500, that Trackhouse Racing entering the Indy 500 at some point is 100% a goal of Trackhouse. It's also noted in that article that basically said that right now their goal is basically a team that says, hey, this is a NASCAR Cup Series team, 10-15 out is your line. We don't just want to be a NASCAR Cup Series team. We want to be a team that's successful in every type of form of racing. This is not the first time that Trackhouse Racing has kind of talked about racing in IndyCar. Last year, there was a lot of talks and conversations that Trackhouse was looking to potentially get involved in IndyCar and maybe race Indy 500 this year. But that really never came to fruition. So, if they are to run the Indianapolis 500, if they ever think about running it, what drivers could they possibly get? There's a couple of potential options that they could go with. One driver is Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson, over time, has expressed interest in racing in the Project 91 team, and Trackhouse probably would have a partnership with Chip Ganassi Racing, so Larson would be very, very competitive. Now, of course, I think Larson would love to basically have an opportunity to get there, but I think it'd be just really cool and incredible if Larson got an opportunity. What about Jenson Button? Jenson Button has expressed interest. He was actually looking to run the Indy 500 a couple years ago. Why not? Give him an opportunity. I also think it'd be really, really cool if Jimmy Johnson would get this opportunity. Jimmy Johnson is unclear if he's going to be returning to Ganassi next year. There's a lot of talk that Carrera may pull out. There's a lot of talk we don't know at this point, but that could happen. But then you think about this, Project 91, Jimmy Johnson 91 car, or even a 48 car that's associated with Trackhouse, and then get Trackhouse in the 91 car for Jimmy to do an Indy NASCAR double or race a Chicago street course race. That's a potential option. I think you've got some options that project that the team could really do. And in my opinion, I think it would be amazing to see Trackhouse come over and race an IndyCar. It would be so impressive if they could do that, and I hope it does happen. So I think it'd be amazing to see for sure. I hope it does happen, and they can find a way to go ahead and make that happen. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about the Martinsville tire test from this past week. For the last couple of days, on Tuesday and Wednesday, there was testing that took place at Martinsville Motor Speedway. The reason that they were testing at Martinsville is because of how horrendous the race was earlier this year and how the short track package has been kind of lacking there. They tested some different types of things over the last couple of days, and day number 1, tire fall off was basically 0.4 seconds from the start of the test to the end of the test, and we could not have that. In day number 1, Kyle Larson set the fastest time. In day number 2, they tried out some different types of tires, and they were getting a lot more wear, and there was more tire fall off in the race. Many drivers were basically spoke to the media in regards to this, and they said there's going to be a lot of unknowns going into that last race. Now, one thing is probably that the Martinsville race in the fall is probably going to be a little bit warmer. It's not going to be insanely warmer where it's going to be like in the 70s, 80s like we got this weekend. But I will say that there is a potential it could get really warm. We could see a decently warm race like last year, and tire wear could be the issue. Last time we raced at Martinsville, temperatures were really cold. I think it will be a little bit warmer, and I think the racing could be better. At the end of day number 2, Corey LaJoie ended up having the fastest time, and it was quick. One thing to note, though, was that they tried some different gear ratios, and there was some shifting problems that ended up basically taking place. And again, there needs to be less shifting. You're going to have shifting on this car, but they need to find a way to where these teams don't really need to be shifting. That's one thing with these short tracks is one thing they really do need to work on, and I hope that NASCAR is trying to find a solution to fix this problem. But again, this is for one race, and I think that this could be a test as well for those short track races coming up. You still got some shorter ovals on the schedule coming up in the playoffs. You've got tracks like Bristol as well. Now, that track is a high bank track. It's not a flat track, so I don't think it will be too much affected by this, but it could get affected. That is a very possible thing that could happen. Overall, though, I think the test was really successful. Some drivers had some questionable things to say, but others generally were a little bit more positive. In my honest opinion, I think it's good to see that they are looking and trying to make some things happen so that we don't really see any issues. You know what I mean? I want to see the racing be good at Martinsville, because if racing Martinsville sucks, you know the car does have a problem. Hopefully they found a solution, and whenever they go back to the drawing board, they can figure it out with the tires. It seemed like there's more tire fall off in the second day. We'll see what happens, but hopefully whatever it is, they can have found kind of a solution to fix this problem. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Junior Motorsports. Now, someone who does articles, works for Sportson, Austin Konetsky, basically wrote an article here a couple days ago in regards to Junior Motorsports' future. And they've been asked a lot of questions about the future. Who's going to drive the 9 car? That is getting very close. But one thing in that article that I've not seen a lot of people talk about is the Cup Series program for Junior Motorsports. We talked about it earlier this year, actually a couple weeks ago, that Junior Motorsports has talked and conversed about maybe making some part-time starts in the Cup Series in 2023. Well, it's sounding more and more likely now that Junior Motorsports is not going to be making that jump up to the Cup Series. Kelly R. Miller basically said that they have been trying really and desperately really hard to get some part-time starts in the Cup Series, but it seems like that it's just not really working out, and there's a bump in the road. And without the charters, you're not going to be making a lot of money. Now, what has been going on with the charter system? Well, charters right now are going for a whopping $20 million. According to reports from people like Adam Stern, they are going for around $20 million. So it's costing a lot more money for these charters, and I don't think these teams are willing to spend as much as they used to. If it was like maybe $5 million, they'd be willing to get a charter. And I think that's why Junior Motorsports hasn't made that jump. And I don't think they realize there. But I think that it's unfortunate Junior Motorsports more than likely isn't going to jump up the Cup. I think when you have a team as good as Junior Motorsports is in Xfinity, I think at some point you're going to have to make that jump. But then again, it's their decision if they want to make the jump up or not. And if they don't feel like they're confident enough, they're going to make a lot of money off it. And without the charters, you don't make really money. We've heard that teams that win, AJ Allmendinger's team, who won in 2021 before the call-out became a charter team, they got 30th place prize money. So they got really nothing compared to what they should have gotten. So I understand, again, I think it's the right call for them to not really fully jump up. But I want to see General Motorsports Racing Cup. I just want to see them make the jump of the Cup. And we know they want to make the jump of the Cup. And trust me, I think they want to make the jump up the Cup. But then again, I think when it comes to the price of the charters and the money, it's not sustainable and it's really not functional. So they got to figure out a way for these charters to get a little bit cheaper so teams like Junior Motorsports can get an opportunity in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Zane Smith. Major announcement coming out of Front Row today as Zane Smith was announced that Zane Smith will be returning to Front Row Motorsports in the Camp World Truck Series on a full-time basis in 2023, driving the number 38 car. In addition to that, Zane Smith will be making select Cup Series starts in 2023, including the Daytona 500 for a part-time Front Row car. He also be making select Xfinity Series starts in 2023 as well. Let's first talk about his Front Row camp, going back to Front Row in the Truck Series in 2023. This is absolutely well-deserved in my opinion. Zane Smith has scored already 4 wins so far, won the regular season championship. I think he's generally been the best driver overall so far this year, with drivers like Chandler Smith and John Hunter Nemechek just right behind him. Zane Smith has generally also been really consistent this year, so he has had great performance. And I think that with him staying, they want to be committed to Zane Smith, and Ford right now really does not have a lot of people in their pipeline. And with them committing to Zane Smith long term, I think it's a great move there. Now let's talk about him in the Daytona 500. This will not be his first NASCAR Cup Series start, as his first start already has come. He drove a 17 for RFK Racing. Now, RFK Racing and FRM do have a little bit of a partnership, but he'll be racing in a third Front Row car part-time. Now, of course, Zane Smith is going to have to race his way into the event. With the car not being a charter team, he'll probably have to race his way in. As there's a lot of talk and conversations that potentially 40 to 45 teams, 44 to 45 teams could show up in next year's Daytona 500. Let's also talk about select Xfinity Series starts. Unclear what team you go for. I would think Front Row would probably build an Xfinity Series team on a part-time basis that they used to have back around 2009 and 2010 when drivers like Tony Raines drove for their organization on a full-time basis in that series. But talking about Zane Smith, he has been so impressive because a lot of people, when they look at Zane Smith, he wasn't fantastic GMS in 2021 except basically winning one race at Martinsville. But this year, he has absolutely been really good, has really improved from last year. Very similar happened to Tyler Reddick from 2018 to 2019. He has just had so much progression in racing, and, he got a Cup start, and people will look at Zane Smith as a potential Cup Series champion one day. And I think that he is going to replace him for Michael McDowell long term. Because Michael McDowell, let's be honest, Michael McDowell is getting up there in age. Michael McDowell is going to be 40 years old next. I think Michael McDowell was born in 83 or 84, so he's getting up there in age. He's getting a little bit older. And McDowell, I think it's not going to be long before he does retire. So I think long term, they want to have a driver like Zane Smith ready to go and be prepared just in case it does happen where Zane Smith's right there ready to go. But I think this is such a great pickup for the team to continue having him there. I think he will absolutely be a championship contender next year on a full-time basis. Takes him off the market for long term, but I think Zane Smith's deserving of this. He's done really good and will finally get the Cup starts without basically having to substitute for a driver who was out for COVID-19 protocols. He will get officially an opportunity to get behind the wheel of it. I think it's cool to see that he's getting an opportunity in Cup. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. Now, I haven't been able to catch up on this story because this has really been talked about at the media center after what happened, and basically we've been catching up. For those of you who have been following the story in regards to Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, near the end of the NASCAR Cup Series race on the final restart 5 laps ago, after the race hazards had gotten stuck into the gravel trap coming into the final corners, we had a late race restart. Chase Elliott chose the outside at Watkins Glen, and Kyle Larson was on the inside. Kyle Larson got a much better restart, got pushed by Allmendinger. He got a really good restart and basically kind of locked up the tires, misjudged the corner a little bit, and got into Chase Elliott. And instead of Elliott winning, he would end up finishing 4th, and Kyle Larson would go on and win. After the race, you could kind of tell that Chase Elliott was really mad. Speaking to Jeff Gordon and Rick Hendrick, he was really mad. And then speaking to reporters from NBC, you could tell he said, "Congratulations to Kyle Larson." He said, "Good job." Seriously, you can kind of tell that he was a little bit frustrated and upset. Kyle Larson also spoke to the media and basically said it's his fault. He wants to apologize. Basically said, "I got to do what I got to do to win races." Now, later this past week at the test session, Kyle Larson basically told the media, including Bob Pockers, he says he basically, in the competition meeting from this past meeting, he basically said that he listened more than basically talked at the competition meeting, and he said the competition meeting went really, really well. Chase also said that the competition meeting went really well, and also talked kind of about the Bristol memes as well. Basically said that he just kind of forgot what track he was actually so frustrated and upset. It seems like both these guys basically kind of have resolved their situation. And I don't think we're really going to see much more tension between these two. And I'll tell you why I don't think we're going to see more tension. These two are generational talents. Both of them are the last two Cup Series champions. And they have arguably been the two best drivers so far this year, Chase Elliott being number 1 and Kyle Larson being number 2. And they're both generally going for the win of a race. Yes, was it a little bit of aggressive and a little bit over? Yes. But we've seen a lot of more egregious moves happen in the Cup Series. And to me, I think it was just a racing deal going for the win. Does Chase have a right to be upset about it? Yes. But I don't think Chase Elliott is going to cause any more problems with Larson. I think people need to realize is these two and Hendrick, they don't want any tension. They don't want tension between their drivers and problems. There's not the first time we've seen tension between drivers. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, back 2009 and 2010, there was tension between the two. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson had a rivalry, but they kind of calmed it down. There was not much that happened. We've seen issues between these earlier this year at Auto Club, but they resolved it long term. And again, I think it's just showing they're both really competitive drivers and two drivers who are going to be future Hall of Famers and drivers who are going to win multiple championships. Chase Elliott could win a championship this year, as a matter of fact. And when you look at Kyle Larson and what he's been able to accomplish, I know he's only won 2 races this year, but they're the top 2 guys in the championship right now, and they're basically racing really hard. And for the next 10 to 15 years, they're going to be the drivers that carry the sport for the next 10, 15 years. Because Kevin Harvick's going to retire at some point, probably by the end of next year. Kyle Busch will probably retire in the next 7, 8 years. And let's be honest, Kyle Busch's performance hasn't been great. You're probably going to have Joey Logano competing with them long term, but it's mainly going to be those 2 guys in the next 10 to 15 years that are really taking the sport in a really big direction. So you got to understand the frustration, but again, it seems like things have kind of resolved. I don't think there's going to be more that happens. I don't see tension happening at Bristol. I don't see tension happening at Daytona, and it sounds like we're not going to see any more problems. And I think that it really is where we should be at right now, is that we should all hope there's no more issues, because either the two, they've got 2 most volatile fan bases. I'm part of that fan base, and they're my 2 favorite drivers. They got 2 most volatile fan bases. But their fans, they're going to be passionate to their drivers, and they're going to show their opinions. And you're going to have sometimes drivers upset, but they're going for the win, and you got to do what you got to do in a situation. I know people say it kind of gets overused, but in that situation, you got to do what you got to do. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano, as another major contract extension for another driver was announced. So far, we've had Ryan Blaney announce a multi-year contract extension and Bubba Wallace sign a multi-year contract extension. Well, yesterday it was announced that Joey Logano has joined those drivers and has signed a long-term contract extension with Team Penske. Now, one thing to remember is that Joey Logano had a contract with Team Penske for 2023, but they did not disclose how long this contract extension is going to be. Judging by the wording of a long-term contract extension, it's probably going to be at least a 5 to 6 year deal, which will take Joey Logano to around 2027, 2028. By that time, Joey Logano will be around 38 to 39 years old, so he's going to be a little bit older of a driver. Now, let's talk about this when it comes to Joey Logano. What are my thoughts on this? This contract extension is well-deserved. Joey Logano's had a long-term commitment with Shell and Pennzoil, and when Shell's committed as they have been, it's not a surprise they've gone ahead and extended it with him. But also, when you look at Joey Logano, he's a driver who is a future NASCAR Hall of Famer. Since that time that they basically signed the contract extension back in 2017, he's gone on to win a championship back in 2018 and has won a lot of races as well. So it's not a big surprise to me that they've signed an extension, especially with the success of Joey Logano. Now, long term, I think Joey Logano, and think about this too, the crazy thing is Joey Logano's been in the Cup Series now at some point of capacity since the age of 18 years old when he made his debut in Cup back 2008 in the 96 car, which had association with Joe Gibbs Racing. It was a Hall of Fame racing car that had association with Joe Gibbs Racing. Joey Logano's been in the Cup Series full time for 14 seasons, and he's only 32. Joey Logano probably is only halfway through his Cup career. He probably can go for almost another 15 to 20 years and still be extremely competitive. and win more championships and win a lot of races. For all we know, in some crazy fashion, Joey Logano could go on a tear in the second half of his career. He's already almost won 30 career Cup Series races, with 2 already this year, and definitely has a chance right now to win a Cup Series championship, and could win his 3rd race this weekend. With how good he is on super speedway tracks, he could be a threat to win this weekend, especially with how fast Team Penske's been on the super speedway-esque tracks. I think you're going to definitely have to watch for Joey Logano this weekend. When I look at this contract extension, yeah, well-deserved in my opinion. I think when you have a driver who's really knows what they're doing, I know that Logano, basically, he's had issues with a lot of drivers on track. He's not really one of the most friendly drivers on racetrack. Off track, he's not bad. But on track, his driver's over-aggressive and sometimes can be way over his head. And that can lead to dangers, and that's affected his opportunity to win championships over the years. But Logano's a driver that's done so much in his career, has helped Team Penske win championships. He's basically the veteran of Team Penske because he's the oldest driver, Team Penske at 32, and he'll have a long-term commitment. You're going to have a team, a really good team, and a formidable team long-term. You've got Blaney's got a long-term contract extension who's going to be with the team. You've got Austin Cindric who's going to be with the team long-term because, of course, he's the son of Tim Cindric, who's really one of the higher-ups and basically the president of Team Penske. And then, of course, you have Joey Logano. I think his contract extension is absolutely well-deserved in my opinion, and I'm very happy to see that we're going to see Joey Logano continuing to drive for Team Penske long-term, in my opinion. Now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Kurt Busch. As it was officially announced earlier today, in 2311 Racing, Kurt Busch had made official statements. 2311 Racing has officially announced that Kurt Busch is going to miss the start of the playoffs and has withdrawn his playoff waiver. That means now instead of having 15 drivers locked into playoffs, there are now 14 drivers locked into playoffs. Kurt Busch has declined the opportunity to compete in the playoffs, will not compete for a championship this year, and it's unclear when he will make his return as he'll miss the start of the playoffs. This confirms that Kurt Busch will be sitting out Daytona, Darlington, and probably missing out the first couple races of the season. Why is this happening? Well, one of the big reasons why this is happening is because Kurt Busch has been on the concussion protocols. Kurt Busch suffered a really kind of, not a really hard incident at Pocono, but had a lot of crashes leading up to the point of what happened at Pocono, and this has caused issues for Kurt Busch. Couple things I want to talk about. Number one, let's get to the drivers that are locked in. Because of this, we now have 14 drivers guaranteed, 2 basically going forward. We got Ryan Blaney and Mark Truex Jr. Mark Truex Jr. actually have been the outside looking in. Mark Truex Jr. now jumps in, and they're both separated by 25 points. That is still going to be really important because anybody below the cutoff line, the 13 and 14 cars below the cutoff line that have not won this year, that are in the top 30, that win, they can still knock out Martin Truex Jr. or Ryan Blaney. So that's really important. We also note that all the drivers down to top 16 in points that are regular season points are all locked in. So right now, I think it's absolutely perfect. So hopefully a driver like Ryan Blaney wins, but I think Bubba Wallace will be a threat. Next thing, I want to say something here. It sucks that Kurt Busch is out. I would love for Kurt Busch to be out there competing in races and going out there and racing. But I think Kurt Busch, what he did here was extremely honorable. The fact that Kurt Busch knows that he's not going to be 100% competitive, he's not ready to go out there, the fact he decided to say, you know what, I don't want to take a playoff spot, I don't want to take one up when I know I'm not going to be ready. Yes, I earned the opportunities, I won that race at Kansas, and I got in there. But the fact that I basically know that I'm not really ready to compete, and I know it's going to be a long time before I'm ready to go, probably almost the rest of this season, I think that's such an honorable thing and gives his Toyota teammate Mark Truex Jr. an opportunity to compete, who's in the top 16 of points. I think that's fair and very respectful. But another thing I really want to discuss about here and really want to say is I've got a really bad feeling that this could be the end for Kurt Busch. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're wanting Kurt Busch to retire. No, of course not. I don't want Kurt Busch retired. I want Kurt Busch to come back and race. But I think Kurt Busch is taking his health very safely. I think the fact that Kurt Busch is taking his health as a major priority, I think is a major thumbs up. His health, to me, I know he wants to go back racing, but I think the fact that he is taking his health and safety as a priority is the number one thing, and I'm wishing for a speedy recovery. But like I just said a minute ago, I got a feeling this is it for Kurt. I don't know why, but I've got a really bad feeling that Kurt Busch is probably going to retire at the end of this year. This gives me flashbacks to what happened to Dale Jr. in 2016. Dale Jr. basically his last race, I believe, was at Kentucky and was supposed to race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway or New Hampshire, but missed out the rest of the season. Had Alex Bowman and Jeff Gordon substitute for him, and then Dale Jr. ran in 2017 full time. Now, I think it's possible that Kurt Busch could pull Dale Jr. and run 2023 full time. But what I'm really worried about is I don't think Kurt Busch is going to perform the same as he has before the concussion issues. Because a lot of times drivers have major health problems, and a lot of times when they come back, they struggle. Steve Park, Sterling Marlin, and Dale Jr. kind of minus drivers had health problems. Same with Denny Hamlin back in 2013, and Tony Stewart as well. When he came back from his crash in 2013, when he came back in 2014, he really didn't do great. And then when he basically had those issues with Kevin Ward, that kind of affected him as well mentally. Concussions are no joke and something that needs to be taken seriously. But another thing we need to talk about is so many people talk about how this car is unsafe. And while I think that this car is a little bit way too stiff, we need to talk about the fact that Kurt Busch has been involved in a lot of accidents this year. If this was the only incident and Kurt Busch had a concussion, then yeah, that would be a major concern. But number one, he is a lot older of a driver. Kurt Busch just turned 44 about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so he's a lot older of a driver. And secondly, he's involved in a lot of accidents. If you go throughout the season, he was involved in an accident in the Busch Clash, was involved in an accident in Bristol Dirt. Talladega got in the put in the wall by Kyle Larson. Got involved in wrecks in the Coca-Cola 600, if I'm not mistaken. Also got involved in wrecks at other tracks in multiple weeks. Both Atlanta races got involved in wrecks, if I remember correctly. He has been involved in a lot of wrecks this year and also Coda too. When you're involved in a lot of wrecks and you have a lot of hard hits in a single season, and when you're an older driver, you're more than likely going to have issues here. But I think the fact that, I think that NASCAR does need to work on ways, and I think NASCAR will work on the safety factor because we've had drivers this year complaining about a lot more of these hits staying long term. Christopher Bell is under the age of 30. Bubba Wallace under 30. We cannot have drivers under the age of 30 and young drivers retiring early and having stuff happen like Kurt Busch did. But I think Kurt Busch is being super admirable to basically sit out when he knows he's not really ready to get back behind the wheel. He knows he's got to take the priority. The other thing right now is that Ty Gibbs, I believe, will continue driving that 45 car. Not sure past Daytona. We don't know. But a lot of people are saying he's more than likely going to continue driving the 45 car past Daytona. But I think what Kurt did here was so admirable to basically take out and stay out of the playoffs. But now, instead of having one spot, basically going for one spot, you've got 2 spots available, and you still could have drivers like Bubba Wallace competing for the spot and other super speedway greats competing for an opportunity tomorrow evening. I think a lot of you are going to be having a lot of fun with that. But Kurt Busch, I'm wishing you the best of luck. Good luck. You're going to be a Hall of Famer regardless. If this is it for Kurt Busch, he's had a great career. And honestly, I hope he does come back and race because I'd love for Kurt Busch to have an opportunity to race once again. So, that is it for today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think this is the end for Kurt Busch? Do you think he's going to retire or not? Or do you think that Kurt Busch will be back before the end of 2022? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Joey Logano's long-term contract extension? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, actually later this evening, we'll have a NASCAR Xfinity Series race review from Daytona pending the weather. Same thing goes for Saturday as well, pending the weather. We should have a race review. Sunday, if the weather does not impact the race, we will have a playoff grid predictions. The predictions for the playoffs come out Sunday, the day after the race. If not, Monday those come out. Keep your notification tabs on the channel. Got a lot of content on the way as we get you set up for the playoffs. We're probably close to 2023 schedule being revealed and probably getting closer to Kyle Busch announcing his 2023 plans. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.